Man Up, a program dedicated to inspiring and helping men live lives of heroic virtue. And now, it's time to man up.
Welcome to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. We are broadcasting on the Iowa Catholic Radio Network. I am Joe Stopulos, and today I am joined on this Heroic Fatherhood series by a heroic father that I know very well, my own dad, Mike Stopulos. Let us start in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and the snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. If you've listened to me talk about fatherhood in any of the most recent episodes, or even back any time I'm talking about this, whether it's in a men's talk or with episodes I've had that are tangentially related to it, or the episodes I've done specifically on fatherhood or my grandfathers, you know that I have been very blessed in my life to have an incredible father and two incredible grandfathers, all of whom I knew very well. My grandfathers lived into their mid-90s and 100, respectively, and my father, obviously, and I have a wonderful relationship. And even my great-grandfathers, what I've learned about them, I've just been very blessed to have a long line of incredible fathers. And I thank God daily for this example that I've had. And that's one of the reasons I think I'm so excited about this series that we've been doing to share that gift, because it's truly a gift that we can give our kids. And arguably, it's the most important gift. We as fathers, the most important thing we can do is to give this gift of heroic fatherhood to our children. Well, in today's episode, and it'll end up being two parts because I have a lot to cover. I want to talk with my dad about his upbringing with his own father, and then also, what it was like to have a father-in-law who he was extraordinarily close with as well, and the examples they had. And then I want to ask him about what it was like trying to raise us rambunctious 6 kids, but what he learned through that process. And there's a lot I want to cover because, again, I saw it firsthand, and I have a unique perspective to this, and I think there's a lot we can all learn from it. So excited today to have my dad on. So we're going to head to a short break, and we will be right back.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Ashworth Vision Clinic. Complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and urgent eye issues. 515-440-4610. AshworthVision.com.
Fast Signs is a custom sign and visual solutions company with an extensive selection of digital signage, interior and exterior signs, banners, and vehicle wraps. Learn more at fastsigns.com. Thank you, Fast Signs in Clive, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from John Leonetti, EOS Implementer, the entrepreneurial operating system, helping businesses and organizations clarify, simplify, and achieve their vision. John.Leonetti at EOSworldwide.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio comes from Next Generation Realty, a Catholic and family-owned flat-fee brokerage serving central Iowa since 1994. Next Generation Realty can handle every step of the process of buying or selling a home. Learn more at nextgenerationrealty.com.
Trivia Night by Candlelight is the annual Green Gala fundraiser to support St. Luke the Evangelist Catholic School, February 10th at the FFA Enrichment Center in Ankeny. Join us for dinner, drinks, and a live and silent auction. Details at iowacatholicradio.com.
Support for programming is provided by Construction Professionals, serving customers through a proven process, creating unique design, functionality, and artistic beauty. Construction Professionals is a Catholic family business built on a strong foundation. cpcustomhomes.com.
My help comes from you. You're right here.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. Excited today for a very special episode on this Heroic Fatherhood series to have on my own father, Mike Stopulos. Dad, welcome to the show.
Joe, I'm honored and humbled.
Well, as I'm going through this and I'm interviewing all these great people on their own fatherhood experiences, I've mentioned multiple times how blessed I am to have had you as my father and all the things I've learned from you. And likewise, you also had an incredible experience growing up. And I've talked about Papu, and even you had a unique situation with your father-in-law, who also, was an incredible man too. And so I thought it'd be great to get your perspective on your life growing up. It's kind of the same questions I've been asking, all these great fathers that you got to be a part of and what you learned from them. So let's start at the beginning and just, give the listeners an idea of what it was like growing up with Papu, my grandfather, as your dad.
Well, I was born in 52, so Dad was just a few years removed from World War II. As you listeners may recall, he was a B-17 pilot, and when the war was over, he met my mother when they were both in college. He went to Samrose, and she went to Marycrest, and they met and were married toward the end of the war. So in the ensuing, and they immediately had my brother Pat, who was born in 47, my sister 49. So, and when you think about it, how close we are to feeling the repercussions of Desert Storm and Afghanistan, and all the issues that have been that people have had since they were in that war. And it's amazing to me that his generation, I didn't see much of that. As ugly and as violent and horrific as that war was, when they came home, they looked forward. I mean, that was my dad. He married this tough Irish woman, and he never talked about the war much. Honestly, I didn't know really of his exploits, the medals, and what he did until almost at the very end of his life. So again, I think he was a hopelessly positive optimist, and kind of had to be. He was an Iowa fan, and and
a White Sox fan. I tell the story that he was a lifelong White Sox fan, and I remember when they won that. It was the game went to 1 a.m. I was in college, probably 2006, when they won the World Series, and I found out later he was probably darn near 90. He was like late 80s at the time, and he stayed up until 1:30 in the morning watching the game. Like, he went his entire life, 80-some years without anything. So, but let's go back even further. He was his father was an immigrant, so his father came from Greece, and he grew up in poverty. One of these kind of first generation kids that didn't speak English and had to just learn how to assimilate to a culture. Yeah, which I think formed him to be the tough guy that he was.
Well, and again, a part of that is Greek culture is very family oriented, and and that's kind of what got him through all that. It was a little bit of a Greek neighborhood, and they really supported each other. And he ended up, going to St. Ambrose, graduating, getting into war. Then afterwards, I don't know, honestly, what he did right after the war. I do know, however, that he and his brother-in-law, Ernie Panis, who had married my mom's sister, Aunt Betty. Anyway, they started the theater business. And in some manner or fashion, my dad ended up being the sole proprietor of that business in the mid-50s. And he embarked on a 20-year stretch of owning and building and movie theaters in the Quad Cities. And my recollections of him when I was young is that he worked all the time. Literally, theaters were open 364 days a year. The only day being Christmas Day, and now I think they're probably still open on Christmas Day. But since it was a small business, literally he worked morning, noon, and night. So he would come home. We would see him in the morning before school. He'd come home for dinner and then go back to the theater and then close it up and do that every day for years. And so I guess he was a great role model in that I knew what hard work looked like. And the work ethic was really second to none. He just knows the grindstone. And again, his positive attitude, just a great work ethic. But he would try to be involved in the time he was home, other than my mother telling him that what we did wrong, and and it was his turn to scold us. But he took his time to try to get involved in some way or other in our lives. although I've told this to your mom, I played a lot of sports when I was young, and I don't recall them coming to any of my games because he was always working at night. I think he came to one Little League game, and that was the game I got a foul ball in the nose and in the top of the first. And so it was like, they never saw the game. They ended up taking me home, bloody nose. But anyway, as time moved on with Dad, he became more successful, and he loved golf. He wasn't very good at it, but he really enjoyed it. And as the years went by, he became more successful, had some managers to lighten his workload. He joined the Davenport Country Club, and we had moved into the McClellan Heights area of Davenport, and there was a lot of great families that I met there, and through the neighborhood and DCC, I had just great experiences and good buddies that to this day are my very best friends. So, and I would caddy for him often, and on his day that he could play. So that was a bonding for us. And he would try to, once every month or so, he would like to get my brothers out and play 9 holes, and it was a fiasco, but it was but it was fun, and he really enjoyed having us all together, and that meant so much to me.
And I would say one of the things, and I've talked about this in the past with Papu, is that family was first. And I think even through his work, as you just mentioned there, that he had to work, and there was no question about it. That was what he had to do. But family always was first. And I remember, we would always force him to give speeches at the end of his life. And he lived to 100. The positivity guys. I remember there was some surgery he was doing in his 90s, and the doctor's like, this guy's will to live is unbelievable. And so we made him speeches every single year. But it was always about family. It always came back to family. And he get pretty emotional towards the end about how this is, life is all about this. It's all about family. And so I think that was one of my lasting things, Papu. But again, you were there with him in the trenches when you were growing up. And so I'm curious, when you then became a father, what were some of those things that you wanted to emulate from your own dad?
Well, Dad honestly had a lot of patience. He really it would take a lot to have him lose his temper at us. And so number one is patience, but probably more than anything was his devotion to my mom. He was so in love with her and so devoted to her. And that was a common theme between, my dad and my father-in-law, the devotion to their wives and how important they were in their lives. And he worshiped the ground she walked on, and he was a totally selfless guy. And I would see that, all the time. And he'd do anything for the family. He always said, you can pick your friends, but you'll have your family forever, and you need to support each other. And so he would do anything. And as years went by, when my mother had Alzheimer's, he died before her. And then we had to deal with my mom and with that insidious disease. And we found a newfound respect for his patience and his love for her, because it's tough. And I remember, my in-laws and my parents became good friends over the years, and they would go out to dinner oftentimes a couple of times a week, and they would all end up at our house every Sunday night. We had a big family dinner for, 30 years at our house. So they became good friends. And I remember my father-in-law, Carl, telling me that my dad was his hero because how he handled my mom's condition. He said, you cannot believe. And again, part of that was, for example, I remember one night we were to dinner, and I was with one of my sisters-in-law, and we were sitting there, and my mom was next to me. And after we ordered her dinner, she asked me, she turned around, what did I order, Mike? And so I said, well, you ordered a hamburger. Oh, okay. And an old fashioned. Okay. So I turned to my sister-in-law and I said, hey, you want to have a bet? And she said, what's that? I said, how many times she'll ask me what she ordered before it comes? And she said, well, what, over the under? And I said, yeah. I said, I'll put it at 25. And she said, what? She said, all right, you got it. Well, it was 32 times that she asked before the food came, what she ordered. So, again, that was just an example of my dad's total devotion and patience with her in it. And that he was like that with all of us. And it was great.
Yeah, and I think that was something you obviously tried to model, and we can make a transition over to Gopa, to Carl Liebscher in a bit here, because that was one of the things he always talked about was just, the number one thing that I as a husband need to do is to show how much I love my wife, right? Kids are important, but mom comes first. And you, I think, did a really good job of that in the same model as both your father and your father-in-law. So I'm curious. Yeah, you were blessed with not only an incredible father, but also an incredible father-in-law. What were your first impressions of Gopa?
Well, I guess my first impressions is he seemed very calm for having 8 kids, and and they ranged in age from there was I guess by the time I met Mary Fran, about 24 down to 7 or 24 to 6 or something like that, and then. The oldest son, the second oldest, Bob, had cerebral palsy, and he had died the previous year before I met my wife. So, and that was certainly a phenomenal story in itself, and I wish I knew more about it. But there was something always going on their house going on. I mean, it was, but he was the true north. He was God-centered. He was honest. He was devoted to faith and family, and as you say, his wife. And he was selfless. Kind of a common thing again between my dad and Carl. And I don't remember him ever yelling or raising his voice. Maybe years later with some of the grandkids when you guys got out of hand. I think I heard him for the first time ever.
One time somebody found a shotgun, and I think it was me or Nick in the closet, and I don't think we brought it down, but I think we said something like, hey, where did that double-barreled shotgun come from? And he lost it on us. I don't think he wanted playing us with guns.
Yeah, well,
that was the one time I heard him yell.
Yeah, well, and again, but he was very measured. He was very calm, very logical, dispassionately walking through whatever it might be. And I recall a couple of bits of advice that he did give me. And one came from his father-in-law, Dr. Art Garside, who was a GP here in the area. And when Carl at some point was fretting about his kids, and it could have been the music they're playing or dress or whatever, anything like that. He said, Carl, unless it prevents them from getting to heaven, don't worry about it. And I thought that was a great piece of advice. You worry about your kids, but really the important things are, what is their moral compass? What did you instill in them? And I think that's awesome. And he also told me when I was going through a tough time, he said, the load gets much lighter, Mike, when there are many shoulders to help carry it. And so when you're having problems in your life, not only turn to prayer and God, but share it with the ones that you love in your family. They'll help you get through it, and they'll make your load lighter. And so that was always kind of a neat piece of advice he gave me.
Yeah, he was never one short on advice. And again, I think you look at I had an entire episode on Gopa as well. And again, his patience, his love of family, it was steadfast, right? You always knew what you were going to get with him. You always knew what, where he was going to be in the issue. And it was always calming. It was always, to your point, of the true north. God came first, and Nana came first in everything he did. And I think, as we're going to transition here to your fatherhood, I think that you look at those two examples, and I think that they're both really pertinent, that you had two men in your life who put their wives first. And I think this is one of the reasons why I tend to say this probably so much. It's been ingrained in me between you and Gopa and Papu, is to say that was it. It's faith and family, and it's, in that order. And it's also your wife, your spouse comes first. And that wasn't obviously always easy. And you mentioned it there with Papu at the end. I vividly remember they were driving through for something, and I had not realized how bad the dementia had gotten for Gigi. And it was a similar kind of thing where she tried to take the meal back at the end of the meal. The meal had been sitting there for 25 minutes. And she's like, these fries are freezing. Jim, send them back. And I'm like, oh my, this is normal? I'm like, yeah, this is every day. And so his devotion to Gigi obviously changed throughout their lives, because obviously when things were great, he was still super devoted to her, but then he had to double down on that when things weren't great. And I think Gopa was another perfect example of that. He moved his entire life. This is a great story. Gopa had my grandpa Carl had a wonderful setup in New Braunfels, Texas. We have a street named, his father has a street named after him down there. They were the purveyors of a lot of things, and we had a lot of land down there. He had a lot of things that could have gone well, but when the woman he married says, no, I'm not living in hot Texas, we're moving to Davenport, Iowa, he said, okay, and moved his entire life up to Davenport, Iowa, because he wanted to make this woman happy. And I think that was obviously both of my grandfathers, and then Dad, you obviously in a similar boat with Mom. Just that is your North Star. That is where you guys go. And so we're gonna have to do 2 episodes, Dad, because we're gonna be we got to transition to your fatherhood for the next one. But let's real quick. Any final thoughts on your dad or Gopa that you want to bring out that we didn't bring light on in this first episode?
Well, first of all, I think my dad was. He didn't have a prejudiced bone in his body. And I remember, in the 50s, early 60s, he would seek out minorities to, in order to help around, to do any of the work, whether it be, helping at the theaters or whatever it is. That was just Dad. And Gopa truly lived the gospel of Matthew. You love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. And the second is like it, to love thy neighbor as thyself. And he lived that. And that was such a great, to me, it really great example for me to see that in action, the gospel in action, with the way he did it and the way my dad did it. So,
well, that's a great way to end it. So we'll do this. We'll head to a break. I'll finish up this episode, and then we'll have you on next week because we got to dive into your own fatherhood, right? We got a lot to cover there. So stick around. We'll head to a short break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you to our business sponsor, Chick-fil-A, serving freshly prepared food with quality ingredients every day of the week, except Sunday, of course. Now with a lunchtime stand located inside the Skywalk at 700 Locust Street in downtown Des Moines. Learn more at chickfil-a.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1890, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu. Mercy College of Health Sciences, mchs.edu.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Skeffington's Formalware, in business since 1951, with locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Coralville, and Ankeny. Skeffington's Formalware, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
Welcome back to Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. That was obviously a great experience for me to be able to share that with you. I'm as I mentioned in the first part, I'm just incredibly blessed, and you can sense it there in my father's words and the tone of his voice that he also recognizes that he was blessed with a great father and a great father-in-law. And I think so much of this that we've talked about, we've covered during the series about the generational impact of fatherhood, and I think you can see it in the conversation with my dad discussing his upbringing and that of my mother, with my father-in-law, Carl. And again, you marry into different families, and I've been blessed with my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and my in-laws and Kristen's family, and obviously my dad was as well. And to have two great men like that to be father figures in the examples he saw. And again, I think that example, that witness of my grandfathers to him and to obviously his grandchildren as well, of just living the gospel out in deeds. Obviously, as I've mentioned before, my grandfather Carl would choose to do it in words more than he did it in deeds too. But whereas my dad's dad, my papu, Jim Stopulos, they just lived the gospel out in their actions and how they treated others. And it was evident to all of us grandchildren through their example of how this is how you ought to treat other people. This is how you are supposed to do that. And I always say, people, especially grandfathers out there, like your work is not done just because your kids are out of the house. And now you've got another role, which eyes are watching you. That you have this opportunity to impact future generations. So thanks for joining me today. I'm Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. Excited to have my dad on again next week as we dive into what the heck it was like to raise me and all my siblings, what my dad learned from that experience, and how he got through it, and dare I say, how he got through it well. So thank you for joining me today on Man Up on Iowa Catholic Radio. I am Joe Stopulos. It's time to man up.
Man Up, inspiring men to live out their call to holiness.